So the campaign is well underway and the politicians are being grilled like they've never been grilled before by a media hungry for answers, which would have made a change over the last 14 years if they'd actually be the same. Jo Coburn had Kevin Hollandrake on her programme, and she decided to give him a ride rougher than a ride over cobblestones in a car with no suspension.
For a party of lower taxes,
well,
that's a direction
Kevin, I'll interrupt you there. I'll interrupt you there because you're not a party of lower taxes. Now, you may have reasons to explain it, but you're not a party of lower taxes under the last few Conservative Prime Ministers. Taxes have gone up for the majority of people because of those frozen tax thresholds.
And she's exactly right. The Tories have employed the same trick as the supermarkets have been doing. For instance, I could go and buy a packet of scones about 2 years ago for 45p. They then rocketed up to 79p, which was due, of course, entirely to the pandemic and the illegal invasion of Ukraine. Obviously, scones playing a major part in that conflagration. The supermarket then took it down by 1p and said prices are decreasing.
£12 billion worth of savings that you have earmarked to pay for this have already been allocated in the budget by Jeremy Hunt. It looks as if you are not going to have the money to fund this 2p cut when you've already allocated the savings, and we don't know if you'll deliver those savings, of course, on other things.
Oh, we don't believe that.
It really doesn't matter what you believe. You can believe the world is made out of marzipan, it's square, and cucumbers make great combs. You can believe all that. It doesn't change the fact that none of it is true, and if you try and comb your hair with a cucumber, you're going to end up in quite the pickle.
We believe there are ways we can make efficiencies. In the manifesto, it sets out 36,000 fewer civil servants.
Now, this is a trick the Tories pull off quite often, and other parties have seemed to cotton on as well. If you get rid of civil servants, you have nobody to run the state support systems. That means less people in health, police, social care, across the board. Getting rid of civil servants simply means more cuts in public services.
Had eye-catching policies on national service.
There are only something like 30,000 places available to go with the military for national service, or so as it's been called, conscription. So the people who are left over from that are going to be doing community service, which means picking up litter, doing things in the community, tidying parks, mowing and whatever, which are traditionally things which are actual jobs. But these people aren't going to be paid for it because it's a voluntary position. So therefore, it's kind of a slave labour economy that people are encouraging. And I can't see many people giving up their weekends to do that for nothing.
On closing Mickey Mouse degrees.
It's difficult to know what is a Mickey Mouse degree and what is not, though. And leaving it to a government that's obsessed with science and maths and anything that's going to give them an economic benefit is not really a good idea. You can tell which areas are going to suffer. Arts, culture. While a degree in knowing what songs Jason Donovan sang during the latter part of his career is not necessarily useful or productive way of spending your time, at the end of the day, people can study what they want to study, and if the courses are there, they should be able to do them. But it's not necessarily a case of the government to step in and say, that's no good, we're not going to be able to earn any money out of you later on.
On the pensioner triple lock plus.
Pensioners have been for decades the people who are most solidly stuck with the Tory mantra and belief that everyone else is getting something for free except me. Oh, I'm getting something for free, well, that's all right then. But the thing is that the Tories have ignored most pensioners, have now started to tax pensioner income. So not only are they taxed on the money going in and the growth of the fund, but they're taxed when they're actually trying to pull on the fund to actually survive. It's really quite punitive and a foolish way of behaving to punish the one section of the community which is almost guaranteed to vote for you.
And now this 2p, but all of those policies I've just announced haven't changed the polls. So what's going to change?
There was, of course, a ridiculously long pause here while Mr. Hollandrake's brain logged into the Wi-Fi and tried to get an answer from Tory Central Office.
Well, this isn't about the polls for us, it's about doing the right thing.
Well, how are you going to win then if you don't change the polls?
These are tax cuts for workers, for employed people.
No, I understand that, but that's not my question.
27
Kevin,
million
I'm so
people.
sorry, but that's not my question. What I'm saying is the policies you've already announced have not moved the polls. They've not narrowed with Labour. They're still 21, 22 points ahead of you.
And then he starts bleating on again with the £2,500 or whatever the hell it is that they've made up and pulled out their arse. This just doesn't make sense. And this is the problem with politics in general. People are given a script to work on and they don't really have the ability to improvise around that script. And what you end up with is a parroting of the same things with the same cadences and the same inflections. And it just does not work. It doesn't come over as genuine, and it's just re-emphasising a point which has been proved time and time again to be wrong. I could say the earth is flat until I'm 86. it won't make the earth flat. What it will do is cause people who see me walking down the street to say, oh, God, here comes that guy with his bizarre theories, let's cross over the road quick.
2,000 per household that you'll see under a Conservative
Well, of course,
government.
and that's been challenged and disputed. In fact, Jonathan Ashworth repeated that it's a lie.
And there we have it. She actually came out and said it. She didn't say, well, you've massaged the figures, or you haven't based these figures on factual, or there are competing opinions about the validity of these figures. She's actually pointed at him and gone, you're lying, you're a liar. And that's what these people should have done all the way along. They shouldn't have just gone, oh, well, if you say that, then it must be true. Skippity-doo, skippity-doo. Instead, they've kind of like turned on them now because these people look like they're being out of office very shortly. And suddenly, they found a pair.
Conservative governments, and under this one too, it's become harder to get on the housing ladder. That is under the Conservative government. Margaret Thatcher's home-owning democracy, it sounds like it's dead.
Well, there's no doubt there are problems in the housing market.
And why would people, particularly young people, trust...
Now, this is a really great time saver and a Tory trick that people want to sort of incorporate into their own lives. When somebody's talking to you, make sure you're talking back at them. Exchange the facts at the same time. It's a tremendous time saver. It cuts a 10-minute conversation into 5, and both of you won't know what the hell the other person's talking about. And that's the Tory way.
You, with improvements in housing, when we've had the Prime Minister admit it's harder under Conservative governments to get on the housing ladder.
Well, we are seeing an increase. There was a record number of first-time buyers actually entered the market.
No, but he's admitted it's harder. Why would people trust you to improve it?
There are difficulties. We're not saying there are not difficulties.
On your watch.
Yes, that's it. On your watch. You're in charge of things. You could change it. You could make the system better. The fact that you've actually made the decision not to, coincidentally, that a lot of people in your party are landlords and owning a lot of properties, which pushes rent up, which means they make more money, that's all purely coincidental. You could have fixed all these things. You've had 14 years to fix these things. But no. It's a little bit more important that you swan off to the free football match, or perhaps accept a couple of extra jobs on the side for £600,000 a year, because the taxpayer aren't paying you quite enough. Yes, I get the message. And Colin Hollandrake wasn't the only Tory polluting the air with his filthy verbiage. Doing a pretty awesome job with her saliva impersonating the output of Thames Water was Laura Trott, who wanted to talk about tax cuts, and tax cuts provided by cutting support to the disabled and vulnerable. Something she seemed quite excited about.
You seem to be getting basically all the heavy lifting for the tax cuts comes from welfare cuts. But that 12 billion isn't really explained.
Well, the Prime Minister made a speech on welfare, you'll remember, before the election campaign, setting out our clear plans to do that. That will raise, we think, £12 billion.
So it's not a real number. It's a bit
it is a real number.
Maybe.
No, it's absolutely not. It is a real number. But the point about it is that this is trying to get welfare not even back to where we were pre-pandemic.
Laura Trott there employing the standard right-wing thing that £80 a week is a generous payment for anyone to pay their gas, electricity, rent and any other details that they have in their lives. It's a strange reality that MPs can make the claim that anyone who's vulnerable and needing state support is obviously a scrounger, and living on £80 a week is obviously a king's ransom, whereas they claim something like £1,400 a week in salary plus a generous expenses package, and yet they say it's not enough money and they have to take consultancies outside to earn an extra, say, £600,000 just to make do.
£12 billion saving isn't even taking us back to pre-COVID DWP benefit payments.
This is Michael Gove, by the way, a man who talks out of his arse so much he's given his dentist PTSD.
I'm asking to see your homework. I'm asking to see your workings, and you haven't produced them.
Well,
all you've done is put an aspiration. If you put that past the OBR, they'd laugh at you.
Well, I think the OBR would take our costings seriously. I think they'd look at what we're planning to do to personal independence payments.
The amount of money that the Conservatives have cut from disability and vulnerable people's allowances and benefits is unbelievable. What they've done to the unemployed is unforgivable. There's only so much you can cut off before there's nothing left. It's like a cheese board. You can only eat so much cheese before you're rooting around in the knots in the wood to find the little crumbs that are left. But it wasn't only the Tories who have a rough time this week. Darren Jones appeared on Victoria Wood's programme at Newsnight, and he was asked to put his balls firmly into the vice while Victoria turned the handle.
Government figures estimate that 4.3 million children, or 30% of all children in the UK, 30% of all children in the UK are in poverty. And you cite those figures in your manifesto. But then there's no plan. What is the point of a Labour manifesto without a plan to combat child poverty?
Well, look, child poverty is a tragedy for the country, but also for every child and every family who's affected. And I know how difficult that is, having grown up in those circumstances.
I'm starting to wonder if it isn't in the job description to say you grew up in poverty. I'm fully expecting the King to come out and say, "Oh, terrible, when I was young, we only had 8 palaces to choose from and we cut down to 2,000 servants in one place." Oh.
So you think there'd be a plan in your manifesto?
That's why we set out in our manifesto today. So that's why we've set out in our manifesto today a number of initial measures which we know have a direct impact on family finances. For example, free breakfast clubs at school, an enhanced offer on childcare for parents who want to be able to get to work, the banning of Section 21 no-fault evictions for families kicked out of their private rental accommodation, which often spirals families into those poverty situations, and a commitment, yes, to bring together government to put together a child poverty strategy that's fit to meet the needs of families across the country.
OK, pause there then, please, Mr.
Child poverty is never easy.
So, and a commitment, right? So you're going to make them wait. You're going to make these kids in poverty wait for your economic growth, which may not come.
No. So the free breakfast clubs, the ban on Section 21 evictions, the measures we've announced in our first 6 steps will be immediately implemented if Labour wins the election on July the 4th. Those are all fully funded and fully costed in the way set out in our manifesto today. But we recognise those are first steps. That's why we call them first steps, and that we want to deal with the structural issues this country is facing so that people can feel the benefit of change from Labour if we win on July the 4th.
That's really good that they're going to have free breakfast for kids going into school, and, you know, poor kids are going to get a decent meal. But they want to make sure that the breakfast is actually as provided and not just a piece of toast. During the pandemic, people were told that there were going to be free food parcels sent out to vulnerable families. These consisted of 1 apple, some ravioli, some rather dried pasta and perhaps a couple of bags of tea, and they were told they were going to make that last for 3 weeks. It was a pathetic assortment. You only have to do a simple internet search to find out pictures of ridiculous items that have been sent through the post, some of which was usually past its sell-by date or indeed rotting. And the other thing is they haven't mentioned about providing free school dinners. If a child is so far in poverty he needs to go to a breakfast club to get a free breakfast, then he's going to need a free lunch as well. And this is all cost, and it could be costed into the process, but it doesn't appear to be. And neither of these things really attack the key issue which causes child poverty, which is insecure employment, poor wages, the cost of living.
How many children will free breakfast clubs lift out of poverty?
Well, we know, for example, that many children are coming to school hungry, and that's unacceptable for them, but it's also unacceptable for their education. And so that's why we're going to make sure that free breakfast schools are available, breakfast clubs are available in every primary school across the country for children that want to access them.
And how many will it lift out of child poverty?
Notices of family. Well, the breakfast clubs will be available to all children who go to school, so they'll be able to access them if they wish to do so.
Yeah. And how many will it lift out of child poverty?
Well, it depends on how you look at family finances. As I say, there's a package of measures in the manifesto today that will support families, especially those in vulnerable work with our new deal for working people.
You don't know, do
where
you?
People have irregular incomes or irregular shift patterns.
You don't know. But let me tell you what the Resolution Foundation say. If I may, sorry.
Sure.
The Resolution Foundation, which used to be run by one of your own Labour candidates. Children in families, 3 or more children, now make up a majority of the total number of children in poverty. They say abolishing the 2-child benefit limit would take 490,000 children out of poverty. So that is an 11% reduction in child poverty overnight. You even have Suella Braverman calling for the cap to be abolished. And Nigel Farage, it would seem, on the ITV debate tonight. Yet you, Labour, won't promise to do that.
Well, that's because the difference between the Conservatives and Reform and Labour is that our policies are fully funded and fully costed. That has to be what people expect from any party trying to form the government at this election. And look, would I like the economy to be in a better position? Of course I would. Would I like a Labour government to be coming into a country where we've got plenty of tax revenues to be able to spend on all the things that we would like to do as the Labour movement? Of course I would. But the fact of the matter is that we will inherit the worst financial situation that any party has inherited since the Second World War. We're going to have to do the hard yards hard to turn that around. And that means that, yes, we've got those 6 steps that we want to get started with immediately, but it will take some time to turn the country around. I think people at home recognise the fact that we can't just click our finger and change that immediately on day one. But our plan for change today and our manifesto sets out how we're going to do that.
Yeah, I'm sure voters do recognise that. And they may also recognise that you are making a choice. You could fully fund and fully cost lifting the 2-child benefit cap, and you are making the choice not to do that. That's right, isn't it?
Well, these are trade-offs. We've made the commitment not to increase...
Yeah, and so on and so on and so on. I think voters can tell the choice between a manure baguette and a shit sandwich.